how do you say yes to a kid or to a guy that's literally not even won a race yet, and no to a 5-time world champion? It's just, that's how it is,
Yeah.
And that's how it is when you get to that level of karting, I mean, you have to go against guys like that. So, but he didn't leave me hanging out to dry. He said, Miami is looking for a driver. They're trying to promote and develop their new KZ engine, and we could probably get you set up with them and Dino Chiesa at Zanardi. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's maybe, okay, the Miami thing's new and, it might be good, but at least I would be the guy. Because I kept on telling him, I want to be living in Europe, testing all the time, and get the same chance as all these other factory drivers have. Mm-hmm. And so I signed the deal there with Dino Chiesa in Miami. And that's when, in the beginning of 2011, I moved full-time to Europe. And what the deal was, because Zanardi was such a small company, I mean, they weren't doing so many karts a year, that I would live at the CRG factory, because CRG was obviously producing the Zanardi karts at the time. I'd live at the CRG factory, and how I would pay for my apartment at the CRG factory is I would work, when I wasn't racing or testing, I'd work in the CRG factory in the rental cart department, because they needed someone to help build rental carts. And I'm thinking, when I get there, I'm just going to, a couple of days a week work on the rental carts, and we're going to be testing every day. Miami's got to get their engine all set up, and it's going to be awesome. And it turned in one of those years that I did, over the whole year, 5 days of testing all year. And I basically, the Miami program at that time, and nothing against those guys. I love those guys. I think they're, very capable of doing engines, but it was just a tough time in the development phase of that engine. And I mean, there was a lot of races that we would go to, and over 3 days of practice and qualifying, I'd maybe do 20 laps, and it was like 4 or 5 laps running in a piston and, going hard for 1 lap and sitting at the end of the straightaway because the engine broke. It was really tough season, really tough mentally, living away from home. I'd broken off, or I'd separated from a long personal relationship, so that was difficult to deal with, being in a different country, and just not, thinking you're going to be the guy testing and developing and doing all this stuff, and really you're just living in Italy, building rental carts 95% of the time. And then when we have a race, we do a race, and then when you're, from the year before, literally fighting for wins, and then to where you're fighting to make the final, it was difficult. It was probably one of my most difficult years of my life and career, to be honest. And it really took a toll on me, and it made me think, okay, maybe I really don't want, and granted, I wasn't getting paid to do this, I was kind of just, all my expenses were paid, but it wasn't like I was putting money in my pocket or anything, So it was kind of like one of those deals, like very, very hard to swallow. And so I actually got, at the end of the year, a paying gig, which was kind of cool, the Sargent boys were coming over to race in the Rock Finals there in Lonato, and being that I was living in Lonato at the CRG factory, they called me, and I did some coaching with them, and it went so well. I mean, Logan Sargent actually won the mini rock category for me coaching him. So we kind of started off a relationship there, and they had a team manager at the time, and so I said, I'll manage your guys' race program here in Europe, and go to the races that you guys do in Florida, and do that. And maybe they even offered to pay for me to do a little bit of racing over in Europe, with the team that they were gonna, race with, just, because they knew I still wanted to race and whatnot. And okay, cool, good paying gig. I can still be, in the European scene and everything. I'm just take a little bit of a break because, like I said, after 2011, that was, I guess for better terms, like just demoralizing, and the thing, like just it seemed like whatever I was doing or whatever I was trying to do in the European world, it just didn't work. I just couldn't get my feet there, and I really had no ambitions to go back to America. Like I said, I mean, it's one of those things. I'm kind of the type of guy. Okay, if you've done it once, you've done it twice, you've done it a million times. Like, that's enough. You gotta progress. You gotta go to the next step. And so I started working with the sergeants, and then they were out of Florida. And then the guy that was, I guess, the first and ever job so far that I've been fired from was the sergeant gig, because the guy that was managing the deal was kind of overstepping me in the coaching. And I'm thinking, this guy hasn't even driven a go-kart a day in his life, and he's telling me how he should be driving, and I feel it's like a lot of things that are wrong, and I'm supposed to be the driver coach. So we butted heads, and then he even told me he wanted to put more weight on the go-kart, on the back of the seat, because it'll go faster at the end of the straightaway, thinking it was like inertia related. And I mean, me being me, I just got up and looked him straight in the face and told him he was the dumbest person I ever worked with, and so I quickly got fired. The day after I was let go, and so I'm sitting there in Florida, kind of jobless and everything. So I called up Alex Speed, knowing that he was working with OGP at the time, and I was actually, in Homestead. So then I'm like, hey, you guys got any work? I mean, I know I'm here. I'm supposed to go to the Florida Winter Tour race, but now I'm not, and just looking for work. Maybe I can get some work. He's like, yeah, man, I'll ask Nate Grindell, and he's the team manager, and we'll see what he says. And they called me like, yeah, come, we're actually going into Homestead this week. Just stay down there, and we'll meet you there, and you can work with us. So, and that's how I worked 1 week with OGP, and, this is 2012, and after that, they offered me a full-time job, and I said, the heck with it. I think I'm going to just, become a mechanic / coach / work with a race team. And, that's when I took my sabbatical from racing. And I think we even went over it a little bit in the last show, being it was probably one of the bigger mistakes I did, but I don't think it was, a mistake at all, being the relationships that I had at OGP, and, working with Alex Speed again, and Mike Speed, and Nate, Mario, and Troy, and George Ariano gave me, one heck of an opportunity to help run that race team, and meeting kids like Kyle Kirkwood, Oliver Askew, Nick Neri went through that program, Sam Beasley, Ashley Ruggiero, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple more. Even I think Brian Norberg went through that program when I was there. So yeah, it was a really, really fun time. But it was an easy time, I would say. I was making great money. I had my own condo. I had the nice car. The big TV. I mean, I had all these, things that people would say, like, that's what I want in my life: a stable job, really good income, and everything. But I did, 2 years of that, and both years I did Super Nationals, and for 1 year I did it with Mick Panigada from Energy, and then last year in 2000, I guess it did 13, I got hooked up with TV Kart and Modena engines, and I did the race there, and my contract with OGP was actually ending at the end of the year, and even though the race in Vegas didn't go to plan with the TV guys, and particularly with the Modena engine guys, they called me at the end of the year after the race, and this is Modena engines, and asking me if I'd be available to come back to Europe and work for them and help them develop their new KZ engine. And like I said, it was, at OGP, it was just easy. There was no really chassis development. There was engine development, but that was, headed by Mike Speed. And it was just easy, we just kind of went about our jobs and, just prepped go-karts, just took the normal OTK go-kart out of the box and, worked with our drivers and whatnot. And it was just kind of an easy, you knew you were going to get paid. And I mean, if you didn't give 100%, I mean, you get paid, or if you gave, 50%, you get paid the same. And it's kind of like, just, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I wanted that development. I wanted that grit. I wanted that, that fire back. So I decided to leave OGP and move back to Europe in 2014 and to work with Modena Engines. And that's where I would say, like, my real European experience started, because I lived there. I started living there full time, and I believe it was January, and I was an employee of Modena Engines as their test driver, and in the first year in 2014, they were teamed up with TB Kart, with the Brenna family, and so that's where I really started, my European adventure, I would say. And it was not in, I was helping develop with TB the chassis and everything, but what I was really entrenched with was the Modena Engines and working in the engine factory. And that was probably honestly one of the cooler times of my career. Even though the results weren't really there, we had a lot of problems, both the engine and chassis at first, but we really started at the end of the year, I believe, getting things sorted out, especially on the chassis side with TB. We came up with a new 32, because they were using all 30 millimeter chassis at the time. And then at the World Championships, we decided to go in the KZ1 category, because there was open chassis there. You didn't have homologated chassis. And throughout the summertime, we started working on a 32 millimeter kart, and we really saw the benefits of that. And it started going well. We actually went to Vegas. We're running really strong in Vegas, but unfortunately, had some more bad luck there. While running in the top 5 against these guys on an engine that was kind of unknown, with the Modens, and still being heavily developed. And I really enjoyed my time with the Brenna family, and that relationship with the TB Kart guys grew really strong throughout that year. And it's like, I guess probably a lot of people have been hearing that saying, because Toto Wolff, Mercedes manager of F1, keeps on saying it nowadays through this COVID-19, but like, rough seas make good sailors. And it was rough at first with TB Kart. We were behind the 8 ball at the beginning of that year, and the Modena engine on top of that. So, you're developing an engine and chassis at the same time, which is extremely difficult to know which direction that you need to go, knowing is the engine getting better, is the engine getting worse, but the chassis got better. I mean, there's so many different, variables when you're doing both at the same time. But both Modena and TB, I think, did a very good job of coming, basically at the beginning of the year, we were fighting, I think we qualified at the first race, I think 45th or something like that. And then at the end of the year in Vegas, we're fighting in the top 5 with, Artigo, the Tony Karts, CRG, Factory CRG, and all those guys. And, I was very proud of the work that we did, and especially at the very end of the year. And it was a great time, like learning about engine manufacturing, working in an engine shop, and, seeing how engines are produced, and not just tuning wise, but manufactured and everything, and being in Italy all the time and getting a little bit more testing than normal, and seeing, just being there day in and day out, I really, really started to cut my teeth and learning a lot more about just how to develop things better. And I was bummed when I came back. I mean, I was under the assumption at the end of 2014, like, everyone was happy. We were going to be running with TB Kart again, because I got to remember, like, I wasn't a TB Kart driver. I was a driver from Modena Engines. So Modena Engines would place me with whatever team they saw fit. And at the end of 2014, they said our goodbyes to everyone at Vegas. And I went back home to the States from Vegas till Christmas time. And then literally right after Christmas, I flew back to to Italy to start work again at Modena Engines, and there was an Intrepid car there.